Hello everyone, we are here for our video that we're going to talk a little bit today about sacrifice. Now I want to tell you guys a story that I heard. I don't know how old I was when I first heard this story, but it really impacted me and really made me think a lot about what is the most important thing in life to me. So this is a story, and some of you may have heard the story of Jim and Elizabeth Elliot. They met while they were in college. They were both studying to be missionaries in a Bible college to go overseas. And they met and they were instantly attracted to each other and wanted to pursue getting to know each other and having a relationship. But Jim really felt like God was calling him to go and do mission work before he, considered having a wife or bringing, a family into the picture. And so, as much as he really wanted to pursue Elizabeth and get to know her and build a relationship with her, as they did spend that time getting to know each other, he really felt like God was calling him to put ministry first and put that as the number one thing in his life before a family or anything like that. And so as they came close to graduating college, he had to have this conversation with Elizabeth and say, I really like you. In fact, I love you and I want to pursue a relationship with you, but I feel like God's asking me to put ministry and, just complete surrender and sacrifice to him before anything else, and to focus on that, and we'll see where God leads in the future. And so he had to make that tough decision right there at the very beginning of their story. And so it was, I think it was about 5 years from that first time where, they first connected before God brought their paths back together. They left Bible college and they both were headed overseas to the mission field to serve, and that had always been their plan all the way through. But as they left Bible college, they both got calls to the same place. Pretty crazy that they were both called to the same place to do mission work. So Jim and Elizabeth both were assigned to Ecuador. Pretty interesting that both of them were called separately. They didn't even know that's where God was leading both of them. But they went to different places in Ecuador, and they were working over there for about a year doing mission work before God brought their lives together. And as Jim was praying about it after that first year of doing mission work, without any distractions, just completely focused on what God was asking him to do, he felt like God was saying, now's the time to bring Elizabeth into this picture. So they started dating, continued with their work, eventually got married. And it was 5 years from that first point where they had said, I love you, before, here they were together. And so they continued their work there in Ecuador. And they had a real passion for the Auca Indian tribe. Now, the Auca Indian tribe was a very hostile tribe. Basically, the way they solved any of their arguments was to kill each other. Horrible way of solving an argument, and a lot of people died very young in this tribe because they were so aggressive. And a lot of missionaries and just white men in general who had wanted to, pursue the oil business or whatever, a lot of people had tried to get in touch with them, connect with them, and it just never worked. The Aucas always killed the people. So Jim and Elizabeth were really passionate about, being able to reach out to these people. And so Jim and some of his friends who had a plane would fly over the Auca Indian tribe, and they would shout down phrases to them with a megaphone in the Auca Indian language. Now, they didn't know the language, but they knew a few phrases from someone who had left the tribe and who had come to live with them. So they would communicate with the Aucas. They would send down gifts in a bucket from the airplane, to the Indians below. And they did this for months, trying to build a relationship and a connection with the Auca Indians. And so, they had this whole relationship that they built with them. And so finally, after months, they decided that they were going to go to the tribe and they were going to, meet them face to face. And it would be the first time that anybody outside of the tribe had ever encountered them and spent time with them in person and lived, if the mission went right. So this was a couple years after Jim and Elizabeth were married. They had a little girl who was just a few months old. Can you imagine the sacrifice that Jim was choosing to make to get on that plane and to fly into Auca territory, knowing that every single man who had ever gone before him had died? So Jim, goes into the tribe. They land their airplane on the sandbar. They have a time that they're supposed to meet with the Aucas, and they do meet with 3 of the Aucas, and they have, a really good conversation with them, at least the best that they can in their, broken language. And they fly some of the Aucas in their plane, take them over the rest of the tribe, and after that first night, they're feeling really good about this. Like, man, this went really well. Maybe we're entering into the tribe. Well, the next day, they're out there on the beach. They had set up a time to be able to meet with the Aucas that afternoon, and Jim was going to call his wife Elizabeth at 4:30 if the mission went according to plan and tell her all about it. Well, as Jim and the rest of them are sitting out there on the sandbar, they see themselves surrounded by Aucas with spears. And they realize in that moment that the Aucas are going to do the same thing to them that they've done to every single outsider before them. They're going to kill them. Now, they had guns, they had ways to protect themselves, but they had made a decision before that if it was up to their lives or the lives of the Aucas, they would let themselves be killed, and they wouldn't kill the Aucas because the Aucas didn't know about Jesus. And if they took that opportunity away from them by taking their lives, not only was it a life they had taken, but it was someone's salvation because they would never have the opportunity to know about God. And so all 5 of the men, including Jim Elliot, were speared to death on the river that afternoon. Huge sacrifice. Jim Elliot has said he is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Pretty deep thought of sacrifice, of giving up whatever it is, whatever it takes. There's a lot in the backstory of this whole situation as to why the Aucas killed Jim and his friends. It wasn't because they hated them. It was actually because of a lie some of the rest of the Aucas had told. And I just want you to imagine being Elizabeth sitting by that radio waiting for the call at 4:30, which never came. A few days later, the bodies of the men were found. And a few years after this, Elizabeth again sacrificed everything she had, and she went to live with the Auca tribe. After the truth came out about why it was that her husband and the others had been killed, the Aucas invited Elizabeth and her daughter to come and live with them. And they did, and eventually that entire tribe committed their lives to God and surrendered to God, and the whole cycle of violence stopped, and so many lives were spared because of that. But I just want us to take a moment to think about the sacrifice that it took to make that possible. It took the sacrifice of 5 men's lives, and then of Elizabeth still sacrificing her life, even though she was still living, to do whatever it took to help the Aucas. And I think sometimes in our lives we're hesitant to sacrifice because it's hard and because we don't know if we want to. But in reality, sacrifice is one of the most powerful things that we can do that can make a change in the world, that can change the world for the better. So I want you to stop and think about, what is it that you're willing to sacrifice? What is it that you're willing to give up to gain something so much better?